Hello, I'm Mario Cordero, CEO of the Port of Long Beach. Today, I'm happy to be joined by Long Beach Mayor Rex Richardson. Prior to being elected to the city's 29th mayor, Rex had a distinguished record of public service as a Long Beach City Council member representing the 9th District, where he also served 2 terms as vice mayor. His track record pursuing positive change for his community has already left an indelible mark on the entire city. He has continued to work alongside neighborhood leaders to bring about vital public safety and economic and community investments to Long Beach. On the national level, Mayor Richardson also serves on the advisory board of the United States Conference of Mayors. Since taking office, Mayor Richardson has been at the forefront of addressing the most pressing challenges facing Long Beach through his Opportunity Beach agenda, which focuses on key priorities such as homelessness, economic recovery, public safety, youth development, and environmental sustainability. I am very excited to have Mayor Richardson here today to tell us about his vision for Long Beach the Port and how the city can support this major economic engine. Welcome, Mayor Richardson.
All right, thanks, Mario, for having me.
So, Mayor, you're now 8 months into your mayoral term.
That's right.
So you've hit the ground running. There's so much going on in the city. How are you doing, and
Good.
How's it going?
It's going well. A wise man once said, "Time flies when you're having fun." You told me that, right?
That's right.
So we're having a good time. We came into office at a really important sort of pivotal moment in our city, where we're going through transitions. We're recovering from a once-in-a-century global pandemic. We're thinking about how to have a more sustainable city, a more sustainable economy, and we get to look forward to the next 5 years where, we'll be hosting the Olympics and welcoming the world to Long Beach, and over the next decade as we transition away from being an oil providence, which we've been for many, many years, for more than a century. We get to now chart what our economy looks like to be cleaner and more sustainable, and make sure that we leave our community in the hands of the next generation cleaner and better than it was when we found it. Sounds like big challenges, but I'm optimistic and bullish on Long Beach. It sort of started off with our transition, and was able to receive some real support from the White House and from Harvard and Bloomberg to help with our transition, and we had a solid first 100 days. But now we're in a place where the transition's over, and it's time for governing. We're the mayor now, and it's time to establish your vision, your doctrine. We just put forward our first budget. There's a lot of exciting things there that looks forward to the future, plant some very important seeds into our future economy, into good jobs, into goods movement that will allow us to ensure that our whole city thrives in the years to come. And so we feel good about where we are. And I'll tell you, one of our biggest opportunity areas is the port and goods movement, right? So we're going to be working together. I look forward to working with you, Mario, to make sure that we come back strong as a port, that we make sure we reclaim all of our market share, that we work with our sister port over in Los Angeles to make sure that we compete together and ensure that the Port of Long Beach and the San Pedro Bay Port Complex maintains its leadership on the national and international stage.
Well, Mayor, I'd like to say not only we are excited about your agenda, we're also very appreciative as city residents of the optimism that you're bringing, because there are challenges, but then again,
Right.
We will meet those challenges for sure.
Yes, we will.
So along those lines, earlier this year during the State of the City, you laid out a vision for the city of Long Beach, and you laid out some major goals. So what are those goals that you want to accomplish as mayor, and how would these goals support the port's mission?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we talked about was leaning to those big challenges you referenced and finding opportunities to rethink our city, opportunities to make our city more resilient. The pandemic really charged cities to rethink about what resiliency means. In a moment where we saw public health become the most important issue to a city, now when we think of resiliency, it's not just preparing for the big earthquake. Right. Resiliency is making sure that your economy is strong. If there was an economic shutdown, that you have supports in place for workers, for families. Resiliency makes, in a big town with a big port, resiliency means having energy independence. That's resiliency for us. And so the Opportunity Beach agenda really is focusing on tackling those big challenges by leaning into opportunities, economic opportunities, environmental opportunities, opportunities for safe and healthy communities, youth opportunities, and opportunity. You get it. And one of the biggest opportunities that we really have is our Grow Long Beach initiative. And really that focuses on taking a look at how Long Beach funds our services and how our economy is made up, and making investments into making it more robust, inclusive, and sustainable. I'll give you an example. Over the last 100 years, Long Beach has been known as an oil providence. We've produced oil, and 100 years ago, we were the fastest growing city in America in 1923. And that's why this year, 100 years later, we're celebrating the 100th anniversary of our airport, because we needed mobility. 100 years since St. Mary's Hospital opened, because we needed health care for this growing community. 100 years since Farmers Merchants Bank opened, because we needed financial services as a community. It's actually 100 years since the North Long Beach community voted overwhelmingly to annex into the city of Long Beach. And it only took us 99 years to elect a mayor from North Long Beach. But I say that to say that why we were the fastest growing city 100 years ago is because we were experiencing an oil boom in Long Beach. That was our economy. And now today, we've benefited, but we also see that we have a responsibility to environmental justice and to our climate to move away from balancing our budget based on those fossil fuels. So that isn't a challenge, but it's also an opportunity to invest in new technology, new industries, like the partnership around Pier Wind, looking at our 5 key growth sectors in the city. Ports and goods movement is one of our biggest opportunity sectors for our city. Tourism, huge sector. As we go into the 2026 World Cup and the 2028 Olympics, we have an opportunity to significantly boost our profile as it relates to international and local tourism and regional tourism. We're a college town. Let's double down on Long Beach State, and let's create more opportunities for thinking and planning around housing and integrating our university into our downtown. We also are a city with healthcare. We've got major healthcare corporations and companies that are anchored here in Long Beach. We're really proud that Blue Cross just moved their regional headquarters here and brought 1,000 jobs. And so those are the things that we can invest in. And then finally, we have a very exciting aerospace future. We're home to Space Beach, one of the fastest growing aerospace space clusters in the United States. Home to companies like Rocket Lab, who's producing spacecrafts here in Long Beach, and Vast Space that's developing the first artificial gravity space station here in Long Beach. And so as we make these advancements, we need to be strategic in how we invest in those industries and ensure that we're able to expand service, expand quality of life in our city in the years to come in a way that's more sustainable than what we've had in the past.
Well, Mayor, you've given a great historical context to this and laid out an absolutely great vision. Mm-hmm. So part of that historical context when we talk about the early 20th century was the involvement of the port complex and the Port of Long Beach, the birth of 2014. Yeah. Excuse me, 1914.
Yeah, 1914.
And the 100th year anniversary we had in 2014.
I remember that.
So with that,
I was elected to city council that year.
So 2014 was a big year. So with that, as you know, the port accounts for 200 billion in annual trade. Mm-hmm. 1 in 5 jobs in the city of Long Beach derive from port operations, and for the region, the 5-county region, that's about 560,000 jobs. Right. So suffice to say, it's a critical economic engine, and by all accounts, consensus is that it is a vital economic engine.
Absolutely.
So with that in mind, what would you say to the dock workers, the people who work as part of the staff in terms of moving this port forward, the truckers, the terminal operators? What would you say in terms of the importance of their role, their contributions, and how the city of Long Beach can support this economic engine?
Well, Long Beach is a port town. It's part of our fabric as a city. It's part of our identity. It's also an important part of our economic mix. When we made a decision to open up the first ports, I'm sure someone said, let's be the biggest port in the United States. I'm sure somebody set that goal. I'm not sure that they knew that we were actually going to achieve that goal, right? When the first ports opened, we still had horse-drawn carriages in Long Beach, right? So now we are a port with significant influence, significant impact on our economy. And with that comes great responsibility. Great responsibility to the residents to make sure that our commitment is not only to the international economy, the regional economy, but to our local communities, to make sure that the next 100 years is clean, the next 100 years is inclusive, the next 100 years uses the best technology and prioritizes people. We also, one thing that's really important to remind folks is that this is a public port. This is a city port. This is the port of Long Beach. And Long Beach is an organization of people, 500,000 residents right here. And as a public port, we have a responsibility to create economic opportunities specifically for people. There is no sense in having a public port if there aren't people who are benefiting from the direct jobs and the indirect jobs created by the port. That's why I support things like living wages in our port. That's why I'm proud to support our new 10-year project labor agreement that ensures that as we take this next important step of developing and investing in the future of the port, electrification, on-dock rail, pier wind, all of these investments will have good quality union jobs that can support a family with a strong focus and emphasis on local hire. That's the covenant that we have with our local communities, that you will benefit economically and that we are looking out for your community. I also think that it's important to just name it. You can have economic progress and you can have environmental progress. They're not mutually exclusive. In fact, I would argue that they're both interconnected. You cannot have economic progress if it is not clean and sustainable. And in order to fund the transitions that we need to electrification, to cleaner air standards, you need a healthy economy and good jobs and investment to make those things happen. And so I see that they're two sides of the very same coin.
So along those lines, Mayor, as you know, the Port of Long Beach has a culture of social responsibility. Environmental social governance is very important to our DNA here, and you've touched on some of that. To hone in a little bit more on that, with regard to the port programs, such as our community grants, our community sponsorships, education outreach, working on workforce development, what can the port do to enhance our collaboration with the city on these issues and these projects?
That's a great question. And, and Mario, I'll tell you, I remember when you were a commissioner, when I was, just a runt, just first started working in the city, and your commitment to the port's clean air and green port policy. And it's great to see the full circle, right? You did that. You went on to serve as chair of the Federal Maritime Commission. We were all so proud when you were appointed by President Obama to that post and served as chair. And then you were able to return home and see that work through as the executive director. That's the benefit of having a local community port, a city port. And it's important for people to know that the port is a part of the city. It's the Long Beach, it's the harbor department of the city of Long Beach. And so when you talk about partnership, that we're one and the same. Our interests are the same. We're the same institution. Sure, you have a big responsibility in that department, but we all serve the people of the city of Long Beach. Now, I think there are opportunities for us to do better. I mean, I served on the city council in North Long Beach, an area when I first got on the city council was an area that didn't have a bank, the only council district in the city, didn't have a bank. We didn't have a paramedic. We're the only district without a paramedic. We didn't have a library. We didn't have a Starbucks. You can say what you want about corporate coffee, but when you got to go to a neighborhood even for Starbucks, something's wrong. That wasn't because something was wrong with those people. It was because the systems in place had not allowed for that level of progress. Today, we feel a lot better. The bank is standing and the investment is there and the paramedic is riding again and all those things are happening. But there's a community right next to the Port of Long Beach that we know and we love, the west side of Long Beach. The west side community is full of rich diversity, proud families, great educational institutions. But the reality is, from an air quality standpoint, they're some of the most environmentally burdened communities in America. And there are some similarities to West Long Beach as there are to North Long Beach that I represented on the city council. They need access to financial institutions and resources. They need access to healthy foods and food and investment in their business corridors. And so, to me, it's a contradiction that can't stand. That a city as big as our city, that's a national leader on goods movement and investing in space, and we're putting rockets into space and space stations, a city that's big on tourism and hosting the Olympics. I think it's a contradiction that can't stand when we have a community next to that much progress that hasn't been prioritized to the extent that it needs. Now, what I'm saying here isn't that it's any individual's fault, but rather we have to acknowledge when systems work and when systems fail, and you have to address those challenges by recalibrating that system. So when you ask, what can the port do? I'm proud that the port has stepped up, is working with the city on the West Side Promise. This is a 10-year commitment for us to take a look at what we can do from an investment standpoint, a policy standpoint, a planning standpoint, environmental standpoint, to make sure that the west side of Long Beach has the opportunity over the next decade to achieve its highest and best potential. Can we solve every challenge in 10 years? No. But should we try? Absolutely. We're in a place where there's a great deal of alignment. President Biden has led more investment into local communities than any administration in history through the Recovery Act, CHIPS and Sciences Act, and I would say probably most importantly to the West Side would be the Inflation Reduction Act, a 10-year commitment of resources to help communities transition to be cleaner and more sustainable. And with all that funding, including the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, which we're well positioned to benefit from in the Port of Long Beach, there's an additional opportunity called Justice 40 initiative that says 40% of those federal dollars should be targeted to communities like West Long Beach. So that's an important opportunity for us over this next decade to lean in and be strategic on how we leverage federal funds, how we're strategic in how the port can come be a leader and a driver in some of that transformation, how the city can be a convener and also a first mover and investor on doing things like expanding open space and investing in planning for access to healthy food and resources for the community. So I think the best thing that we can do as the port, as the city, is go and try to make the biggest impact we can on the community that has the most need.
Well, Mayor, that's a great accomplishment on your part. And with all due respect, with regard to the accolades you referenced in regard to myself, when I was a commissioner, I think I was 50 years old back then when I said the challenge for the port is to be a benefit for the many as opposed to the few. You're 39 years old. Yeah. You've accomplished a lot more in 39 years than I ever did at age 39. So I think I have a sense that the reason you were elected mayor is because you proved those accomplishments at what you did in North Long Beach in the 9th District. So along those lines, let me see if I could dwell in a little further because I think this is a very important topic, economic development. So with that, the port, I think, has been a stellar example, going back to the Green Port policy, how we were able to move with environmental sustainability projects or sustainable development, and also moving it forward that we produced and still are a job producer here at the Port of Long Beach. So with that, what other areas of economic development do you think lends itself today to really think outside the box of how the port and the city could work together to further exactly what you just said in your previous response?
Well, that's a fun question. So the port's going to go through a transition. We know that electrification, zero emissions, the transition from diesel trucks to clean trucks is something that's going to unfold over the next decade. And the infrastructure around that is literally going to be built in the port community and the adjacent communities. That's a tremendous opportunity for us from not just from an environmental standpoint, but from an economic standpoint. When we invest in things like clean trucks, it's multiple benefits. One, we get to invest in infrastructure, electrification. That creates good quality union jobs. IBEW electricians installing electricity, conduit and things like that. And then it sets the foundation for cleaner air. That's benefit number two. The West Long Beach, North Long Beach communities will breathe cleaner air and live longer. But the third benefit, selfishly, is that when people plug up that truck in the city of Long Beach, we tax it. And that revenue, as we head toward more electricity, is a growth stream for us. It's a revenue stream that's growing. And that's how we continue to provide quality public services. So as it relates to partnering, how can we find more opportunities where the city and the port can find companies that can locate within the ports, place their headquarters within the ports, bring their jobs into the ports, have point-of-sale transactions that take place in the ports, and make sure that they're plugging up and using electricity. All of those are the ways we maximize the opportunities so the port can thrive, but also the city's general fund and bottom line can thrive. So there's lots of opportunities. Secondly, and I'm sure this is going to come up, but the big vision around Pier Wind, it's an incredible vision. We have the opportunity here in Long Beach to help the state of California meet its clean energy goals uniquely by going back to our manufacturing roots. Long Beach is where the C-17 was built. We've got massive aviation history. We're in advanced manufacturing now, but we have the opportunity to build, wind turbines the size of the Eiffel Tower and deploy them right out to sea here on the West Coast. And while we're at it, build thousands of jobs to the scale of the Navy shipyard and the impact that had, or to the scale of McDonnell Douglas and the C-17 program. That's the opportunities that we have. So it's in the city's interest to make sure we're talking with the state of California about the entitlement pathways to make it happen, to speak with the federal government and go and advocate together for the investment and the resources to make this happen, and to make sure that private industry are making the investments necessary to create the opportunities for more jobs and economic activity here in our port.
Mayor, this is going to be my last question.
Sure.
And again, kind of following up on what you have already stated, but for the Port of Long Beach, we like to say we're building for the future.
Absolutely.
Our capital improvement program, we spent about $4 billion in the last 10 years. Going forward, a lot of investment for rail, trying to get more of these containers to go out of the complex by rail as opposed to clogging up the truck corridors. So in essence, as you know, we're moving towards a transformation to zero emission. And as you referenced, we now are moving towards this concept of Pier Wind to move forward with, actually promulgated by your vision of how we move forward to zero emission, how we move forward to further renewable energy, which is part of facilitating zero emission. So along with that, you've also brought another future vision for the port in terms of amplifying what we have a base for, and that is what we call, or what you have referenced as Space Beach. So could you tell us a little bit more about that, and in your view, how can the port work with the city to attract these emerging industries?
Well, I think there's a couple of things we have to do. One, I think we need to do well at being a port, right? If we're a good functional port and we remain to have our leadership in a deep channel port and our logistics are working well and people can get through our port well, then opportunities will present themselves. I think, we need to continue to work together with the Port of Los Angeles to maintain our leadership, get our market share back on the West Coast. I think that's important. We should be advocating together. We should be planning together. I believe that. But the opportunities that we have are very, very cool. Imagine, a rocket. Let's say it's a large 3D printed rocket from relativity space, manufactured here in the city of Long Beach. Gets built, and then we put it on some machines, and we drive it through the city and have a big parade, while this giant rocket is going from relativity space down to the Port of Long Beach, where it's put on a barge or assembled and taken off to where it needs to go to be, sent to space. Just imagine the memories we'll be creating for young people who get to see these rockets, these massive rockets that were produced in their city be launched there. Imagine the jobs that young people will have opportunities to seek when they have firsthand integrated educational experiences because they interned at the Port of Long Beach and had to help work on the logistics of getting a rocket through the city, through our ports, and onto a ship. Imagine the young people, the students in elementary school or in high school at UNISADO or Jordan High School, getting opportunities to go and learn firsthand from engineers who are planning out the exploration of space. For every engineer that's coming out of Long Beach State working on Space Beach, there's 6 technicians that'll be trained from Long Beach City College. So what we're talking about is being at the ground floor of something very, very special that's going to have an impact on generations to come. The Port of Long Beach is an incredible partner there. A number of our Space Beach tenants are here in the port. ABL Space Systems is here in the port. And as we plan for the future of the port, I think there's definitely space to think about innovation, climate innovation, space innovation, startups, incubation, all of those things having a role in the port. And again, the fact that we have the close proximity of the partnerships, we're really well positioned to make sure that this whole area becomes an ecosystem, really an ecosystem for advanced manufacturing and goods movement. So we have tremendous opportunities here. And, I'm just fortunate to be the mayor to be able to talk about these things and inspire our community to work together to make these things happen.
Well, Mayor, you mentioned this word, or you referenced imagination. Ironically, at the State of the Port this year, we referenced here at the Port, this was the year of imagination, and hence we introduced Peer W along with the city. That is, the city of Long Beach's answer to how can the state of California further the roadmap to win energy. So with that imagination and that state of mind, I think we've done great things together, and I think I want to make sure that everybody who views this in the industry, whether you're a trucker, whether you're a terminal operator, dock worker, I think we have a lot of comfort that we have a mayor who supports this port, who supports the growth of this port, but albeit at the contingency or contingent on how we further our sustainable development and get to our goal of zero emission to further improve our neighborhoods and our communities. So with that, Mayor, thank you so much for taking the time. But before we end here, I want to give it back to you. What else do you want to add?
Well, it's just good to be able to be here during your tenure of leadership. And I mean, I just want our residents to know just how special it is that we have, a port executive director that's, really committed to our Long Beach community. And it's really special. We're great that we have a Harbor Commission that really cares about our community. And in the years to come, there will be big opportunities to dream, opportunities to imagine. And we have to just make sure that we're taking advantage of all of these opportunities, and that our port feels awake and alive, and not taking things for granted, but rather sort of leaning into the future, leaning into peer win, leaning into inclusion, good jobs, healthy communities. And I believe that's the port that we have, and there's always more that we can do, right? But I think together, our challenges are certainly great, but there's no challenge that we can't overcome if we continue to work together.
That brings us to the end of our interview with Mayor Rex Richardson. Thank you, Mayor Richardson, for your time and participation today.